At 1438 local time, the Arabian Sea looked deceptively calm. The USS Spruance had been cutting through those waters for 3 quiet hours, part of a routine screening patrol that was anything but routine beneath the surface. 30 miles to the north, something classified, something important was unfolding, and Spruance was the shield that made it possible. On radar, everything appeared ordinary. A loose scatter of fishing dhows drifted across the scope. Nets cast wide, engines idling low. Harmless, predictable, background noise. And then, in the space between one radar sweep and the next, the illusion shattered. One of those contacts moved. Not a drift, not a turn with the current. It surged. Both diesel engines roared to life, throttled to their limits, and the vessel tore itself free from the cluster like a predator shedding camouflage. 13 tons of fiberglass and fuel, an IRGC PACAP class fast attack boat that had spent over an hour pretending to be nothing more than another fisherman on a quiet sea. It wasn't fishing. It was hunting. On its rails sat 2 anti-ship missiles. Its orders were simple. Close the USS Abraham Lincoln. In the Combat Information Center aboard Spruance, the radar operator saw the spike before he understood it. Speed increasing, bearing tightening. Intent forming faster than classification could keep up. The tactical action officer didn't wait for confirmation. He'd seen enough. He keyed the command net. Forward of the bridge, the Mark 45 5-inch gun came alive, its barrel slewing toward the threat with mechanical precision. Beneath the deck, the Mark 34 fire control system began its calculations, predicting movement, factoring wind, ship roll, wave patterns, every variable that could influence a shell traveling faster than sound. But the system had a problem. Steel ships reflect radar like mirrors, clean returns, stable tracks, easy solutions. Fiberglass doesn't. The PACAP's hull barely registered against the chaotic shimmer of the ocean's surface. Each wave crest distorted the signal, flickering like a dying light bulb. The computer needed 2 stable pings to build a firing solution. It never got them cleanly. The gun fired anyway. 3 seconds of flight time. 3 seconds was all it took for a boat moving at 52 knots to shift 80 meters from where the computer believed it would be. The shell slammed into the ocean behind it, throwing a towering column of water into the air. The concussion rippled through the attacking boat. A deep, physical udar that the helmsman felt through the hull, like a punch against steel. Close enough to terrify. Not close enough to stop him. The gun recalculated. Fired again. This time the round missed left. Another correction. Another shot. Another miss. The system was doing everything right. The target was doing everything better. 12 rounds burned through the ready drum in rapid succession, each one a near miss. Each one proving the same brutal truth: this was not a controlled exercise. This was every difficult variable stacked together. High speed, erratic maneuvering, low radar signature, rough seas. And then the gun fell silent. 8 rounds remained, but the reload cycle would take 2 minutes. 2 minutes without the only weapon that could reach the boat. 2 minutes while the threat closed another 3.5 kilometers toward the carrier. That number mattered, because classification had finally caught up. The intelligence display confirmed it. Those weren't just rails on the deck. They carried Kausar anti-ship missiles. Sea skimming, fast, lethal, 20 kilometers of reach, and once launched, they would give the carrier's close-in defenses mere seconds to react. The helmsman aboard the PACAP didn't need creativity. He followed doctrine, full throttle. Slight course adjustments every few seconds. Keep the bow pointed forward, minimize the radar profile. A weapon disguised as a boat. The TAO made the call. Cease fire. Launch the helicopter. On deck, the MH-60R Romeo was already spinning up. Crew moved with urgency bordering on violence. Chocks ripped away, hands clear, rotors biting into the air. The pilot skipped everything that didn't directly contribute to getting airborne. Seconds later, the helicopter lifted, nose dipping aggressively as it traded altitude for speed. It became a hunter. At 200 feet above the waves, pushing 150 knots, the Romeo surged toward the contact. The sensor operator had already locked onto the bearing, the multispectral targeting system sweeping the sea with thermal precision. And then it saw it. A white-hot streak against the cool blue of the ocean. The pay cap. 10 kilometers from the carrier. Inside the attack boat, the helmsman reached for the firing switch. The radar warning receiver screamed. Laser. He'd been painted. The Hellfire missile launched. Unlike the gun, this wasn't a blind swing. It was a needle threading itself along a line of light. The laser designator clung to the boat's hull, and the missile followed it with absolute obedience. The boat jinked. The missile matched it. At 475 meters per second, distance collapsed in an instant. The warhead struck with surgical precision, and the boat didn't sink. It ceased to exist. One frame on infrared showed a target racing toward the carrier. The next showed debris scattered across 200 meters of burning ocean. From first detection to kill, 11 minutes. 4 decisions in sequence, everyone correct. But the moment didn't end there. Because the destroyed boat had never been the real attack. It was the probe. As the Romeo circled the wreckage, its sensors picked up 2 more contacts, identical fast attack boats breaking away from the fishing cluster the moment the first one died. They weren't charging forward. They were retreating. Full speed toward the Iranian coastline, toward Keshm Island, toward tunnels. If they made it, they would disappear into reinforced underground pens carved into the rock. By morning, they'd be back with new missiles and new tactics learned from the encounter. The Romeo had also done something else. It had announced its presence. Radar emissions, missile launch, explosion. The entire engagement lit up the coastal defense network like a flare in the night. Iranian surveillance radars began sweeping. Air defenses activated. A Tor M1 battery rolled into position overlooking the coastline. The situation was escalating. But far above, something else had already begun moving. 2 A-10 Thunderbolt II's Pelican 31 and 32 banked south after receiving vectors from an E-2D Hawkeye. They had been orbiting for hours, patient, almost forgotten. Now they were exactly where they needed to be. The A-10 wasn't fast. It wasn't elegant. But it was relentless. Pelican 31 found the fleeing boats at 15 miles, bright signatures cutting across dark water. He had a choice: destroy them now or follow them. He chose patience. He throttled back, dropped altitude, and shadowed them from a distance. They led him straight to the entrance. A narrow opening in a limestone cliff, barely visible beneath camouflage. One boat slipped inside and vanished completely, swallowed by the rock. Now the problem changed. This wasn't about boats anymore. This was about the base. The second boat was seconds away from entering. Pelican 31 Dove. At 12 miles, the warning receiver screamed. The Tor M1 had him. He dropped to 200 feet, hugging the coastline, using the terrain to break line of sight. Every cliff edge reset the enemy's targeting clock. Seconds visible, seconds hidden. A deadly rhythm. Then the gun spun up. The GAU-8 Avenger. He lined up the shot. 1 second burst. 65 rounds tore through the air before the helmsman even registered the sound. The boat disintegrated under the impact, shredded into fragments that scattered across the water like ash. A missile launched from the cliffs. No radar warning. Infrared. Too late to outrun. He broke hard, flares bursting behind him in blinding heat. The missile hesitated engine or flare and chose wrong. It veered away, detonating harmlessly behind him. Pelican 32 arrived seconds later. Rockets slammed into the missile team's position, eliminating the threat before a second shot could be taken. Then came the final strike. A Maverick missile locked onto the tunnel entrance, targeting not the door but the rock above it. The missile hit, and the explosion fractured the natural fault lines. The mountain answered. Hundreds of tons of limestone collapsed, sealing the entrance completely. 3 boats destroyed. 1 hidden base buried. An operation erased before it could evolve. The A-10s turned away, low and steady, disappearing beyond the coastline. They hadn't won by speed. They hadn't won by stealth. They won because they stayed. And when everything else failed, they finished the fight. They finished the fight.